Hello everybody. Today we will show a presentation and topic this presentation in forces collectivization in Kazakhstan, essence and consequence. And after this presentation is Yerdaulet Ayan and Bishliogli Akbar. Today we will tell really important and basic moments, namely about the course of collectivization in the USSR. The next moment is Small October with Fyodor Goloshokin, and the really important moment is hunger in Kazakhstan. In this slide, I want to say that the goal and the beginning of collectivization. In 1925-1933, the head of the Kaz ISSR was Fyodor Goloshokin, and he decided to hold a small October. In 1927, he set a course of collectivization and finished by the spring of 1932. And 1929-1933, collectivization began with the fact that communists wanted to carry out industrialization, and for the was necessary to raise money, and they began to reap off the money from the people and began carry out collectivization. And this essence of collectivization itself, the liquidation of private property of peasants and the creation of collective farms. Collective farms are united farms that were under the authority of the state, and the money was given the pocket of free. And for collectivization and settlement, Kazivcom attracted workers from other regions and the USSR. And the next really important moment, collectivization, is Goloshokin is heading for the situation of the village. Decree on confiscation by farms was adopted in 1928, and its moments, it's really of the eve for collectivization. And confiscation of semi-feudal base was carried out in violation of the laws. The grain procurement campaign was completed the situation of the village, and this moment plays really big role. Role was happening, and right now Ayan will tell about the cruelest tragedies.
Consequences of collectivization. Such an ill-conceived policy of the authorities has led to the opposite result. In the early 30s, there was a sharp reduction in yields. During the first five-year plan, the share of the republic in grain production nationwide decreased from about 9 to 3%. But the most severe consequences were in animal husbandry. If before collectivization there were over 40 million cattle in Kazakhstan, then in 1933 there were only about 4.5 million cattle left. 87% of collective farms and almost 52% of individual farms have completely lost their livestock. This led to the worst tragedy in the history of Kazakh people, the famine of 1930-1932. In fact, the genocide against the Kazakh people was accompanied by a huge human casualties and lost about 2,150,000 people. 40% of the population, people were looking for salvation in a foreign land. As a result, migration of the population estimated at over 1.5 million people to Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Mongolia, China, and etc. Of these, only 414,000 people returned back, but 616,000 migrated irrevocably. The largest American historian, a deep researcher of the nature Stalitism, Robert Conquest, wrote that collectivization in Kazakhstan turned into colossal human tragedy of the Kazakhs. There were also armed demonstrations against the policy of forced collectivization. More than 5,000 people participated in one of the largest of them, the Karakum uprising. It was attended by residents of the southern, central, and western regions of Kazakhstan. People asked to stop forced collectivization, return confiscated cattle and property, return illegally convinced peasants from exile, and also allow local residents to create collective farms themselves on a voluntary basis. The authorities didn't even talk to the rebellious people. The performance was suppressed by the 8th Armored Division. 175 people were sentenced to death. 172 participants of the uprising were sentenced to stay in the correctional labor camps for a period of 10 years who were sent to the Siberia. The resistance covered almost the whole Kazakhstan. From 1929 to 1931, 372 uprisings were registered in the Republic, in which about 30,000 people participated. Popular unrest was suppressed in the most brutal way. The authorities attracted regular troops. More than 5,500 people also received long prison terms. 883,000 of them were sentenced to the highest penalty, execution. During this period, more than 100,000 residents of Kazakhstan were subjected to repression by the authorities to one degree or another.
Okay, and finally I can say result of collectivization. And after the hardest 5 year, you can accurately download their collectivization was failed since the number of livestock decreased by 10 times. Grain production decreased by 10%, huge area of the country were gripped by famine, which was called the Holodomor in literature. Yes, the massive outflow, the rural population plus low harvest in the early 1930s, there was dragged many areas led to the fact that there was nothing to feed the livestock. His losses were enormous. And finally, I want to provide links on which you can provide detailed information. Thank you.